Tell us when we're on.
We're on.
And we'll cut out all the stuff we don't want people to hear.
We're on. I think we're on. I couldn't get it working with all the graphics.
Oh, well.
So never mind. We're back. It's Tuesday. It's 4020 live. Francis Cummins is here. How are you?
I'm very good. Very good.
Fucking tanned.
Tossed the Dell round there at the moment.
Has the fair gone now?
We had the triathlon this week.
The triathlon was a big one this weekend, yeah. So
we were on BBC Two. It looked fantastic.
It did look nice.
Did you enter?
I once wish I lived here. Oh, we do.
What do you want to start with?
Well, it's been a great weekend for Rugby League, except clearly for the teams that lost. But I just thought the profile we had on Saturday with the 3 semi-finals, fantastic, lots of talking points, some of them contentious, which we'll get Francis's take on because it's far more important than ours might be. Sunday, we had the two great 1895 semi-finals and a wonderful story of two historic clubs getting to play at Wembley, which is fantastic. We had the first international in Eastern Europe, first time Bosnia have staged one, which again, it's only a little thing, but it is a sign that the game is growing.
Do we know who's the front runner for the Golden Boot then?
Well, I think the Serbian prop scored twice, so it's got to be it.
So the Serbian prop, wonderful. Congratulations to the Serbian prop, whoever you are.
We do have his name, I just can't pronounce it. So I reckon that we've got a lot of positive things to talk about, and
surely not.
I mean, you are an advocate of spreading the game as wide as possible.
Of course.
Start with the women's final, because that was first. Great occasion. Got the coverage it deserved, and it delivered.
It did. I've been lucky enough to either be involved with a few of the girls around the clubs when I was younger through the rugby school that I do, but I always look at them and think you're playing a sport that is extreme in itself. It's extreme. It's not for most people. Most people can't physically do it. It's not a natural thing to run into people and bash people, and they're also doing it on the back of no real trailblazers. And I just think they're fantastic. I just admire every time they take the field, or every training session I've seen them do when they're younger, and they're 100 miles an hour. 100 miles an hour. And I just think take your hats off to them. And I think for us as a sport, I think it's fantastic.
And whilst the result probably went to form, much to admire in the way York played early on. I thought, just a little bit more around their last tackle. They had some opportunities. Saints absolutely ruthless. And when you think about the World Cup coming up at the end of the year, some real quality performances. Jodie Cunningham is an absolute trailblazer because you can tell her rugby intelligence when you see her on the field.
And I think that's the thing, and that sort of level at the moment, you can see when some teams got 8 and 9 are full on unknown, have grown up with everything, and then you can see the team who might be, they're athletes, they're doing really well, but you can see that they're still learning the sport, and that's great that they're recruiting them a bit later on. And I think there's some real good lines from Saints. You can see that they've got it within their blood. They've known it and played it a long time, and with echoing with the Yorkshire. But it's good. It's good that you've got another name now. York have come into it.
Yeah.
And it's really good to see that they made a final. Obviously, you might be a bit biased towards Leigh, but it's one of those, isn't it? I just thought it was fantastic. I thought to see it on BBC is a huge thing, not only for Rugby League but even women's sport. To get that exposure it got, I think it's tremendous.
And a new name on the trophy as well, which again, if we could have more new names on trophies, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, well, obviously salary cap and things don't really come into it, but it's more of that. Obviously, that to Eve and how it's going. How Saints then have probably invested a little bit, and they talked about how they train and what they've put in for the last few years. You can see it all paying off, and there's part of me that they should share what they've done with other clubs. It shouldn't be a secret. Obviously, you've got to have players as well, but they should share ideas. I think that'd be a real novel thing to do and to show how they've done it.
And then we move on to the men's semi-finals, and Saints Hull for the neutral was a fantastic game, settled by a brilliant read and fantastic interception. But that wasn't really what everybody was talking about, and got to get your take as a former professional.
Yeah.
Clearly, the Josh Griffin incident is what everyone was talking about afterwards, and in some respects, for the game, it's the kind of talking points we're desperate for.
Yeah.
Where social media is awash with people who don't normally interact with rugby league said, "Oh, what's going on here? And is it fair or is it not fair?" So I'm going to put you in a position of Josh Griffin to start with, and then Theo Farge. I am assuming that when you've been injured on a field and suffered extreme pain, one of the things you've done is known in the back of your mind that the first thing you need to do is safely protect and then get off the field.
Yeah, I mean, it goes out the window, doesn't it? I mean, there's certain things I've never done an Achilles. I've been near people do it. I've heard it as well. It's a sickening noise. Never mind the feeling to it. But I've probably held onto the ball, used it as a teddy bear. The ones I had, but you can't be trained for that sort of incident. This is not a niggle. This is not a little bit of a pull of a calf or an hamstring. There's some serious injury here where obviously it will coil up as well. It must be the weirdest feeling ever. You're not thinking about holding onto the ball or even probably where he was. When that sort of injury is happening. Who's to say how you're going to react? You'd like to think, oh, everybody hold on to the ball, but your Achilles is snapped. Your foot's now back like that. Not like this anymore.
So whilst everything he's done is absolutely understandable, you can't criticise the guy who then picks up the ball in the heat of what's happening, who's 10 yards away from the line, and plays to the whistle, which is what every player's taught to do.
That's right, and things within the game happen this quick anyway, and who's to say in that split second, is he going to work out, oh, I think his Achilles has gone there, because, no, it could be a slip, a drop of the ball, that's my opportunity, I'm going to score. That's his job as well. It's I don't understand people having a go for him for doing his job, and he's not done it on purpose. It's happened, there's been opportunity, he picked up the ball, and that's what's obviously everyone jumping up and down.
Some people have been blaming the referee as well, but again, the position he's in, he sees a ball come loose.
He's got to be a medical expert. He's got to recognise that.
But he did. The only thing he could do was refer it to the screen, and nothing untoward could prevent that try being given.
No,
just pure human misfortune.
That's right. That's what all it is, and there's no law in it. There's nothing for the ref to make a judgment on. It's unfortunate. There's little bits that seem to be creeping into the game. There's a bit of I'm seeing people pretending to do things at the moment, and it's starting to really get. It's
coming out in the NRL as well that they make kickers particularly who are hit slightly late, who we're trying to protect, but might be staying down for longer if there's an opportunity that it can be reviewed and be a penalty.
No, it does. It gets me a little bit that either side. I think Griffin did well. He's just not survival. It's just his legs snapped. Everybody else got to play on. It's just that's the thing. And can you remember the last time this happened?
I'd never seen. I mean, it happened right in front of where we were sitting reporting, and it's the strangest thing I've ever seen. And I probably will never see it again, because you could tell something was up, but you couldn't tell what it was. And in the heat of trying to work out what was happening with Josh Griffin, Farge had scored, and you're going, I have no idea what just happened here. Obviously, the first thing is we wish Josh a speedy and full recovery, and be lovely to think he might even be back in consideration for the World Cup. But I'm told that that's an injury that takes a lot longer to heal. I think the statement from Brett Hodgson afterwards should have cooled the waters. It didn't, but he was the one that said, "Don't blame Theo for anything that he did." I would have probably almost instructed my players, expected them to do the same, and it's really, really unfortunate. The thing is, as well, I'm really glad that incident didn't determine the outcome of the game. Had that been in the last minute, it might have looked and felt and seemed a little bit different, but Hull were great in coming back in a match that seemingly had gone from them. And it wasn't that, it was an errant but well-meaning pass that cost them in the end.
Well, it's like everything else, and you've got the drama of chasing games and pushing and making decisions, and that's what the game's all about. And you either make them, you don't, and it goes for you or it doesn't. This is such a freak. I can't remember. I've seen Achilles go before, but not in this instant. I've seen people turn round as if someone's tapped them on and then they've hit agony when they've hit the deck, but not in this. And I've never seen something to cause them, a team, you know, this sort of outcome. There's a knock on, or you know, the teammates pick the ball up, but it's just unfortunate. And people don't realise how much luck or bad luck is part of the game. It's woven within the game. It's in the rules almost.
The fact is, it's the rules, isn't it? That no rule has been broken. So how can anybody complain? But I was going to ask you about. We'll talk about Saints in a minute, and you know, when they play expansive rugby and warm weather, they are an absolute joy to watch. Hull seem to be two different teams. There seemed to be a team when Chris Satay and Leigh were on, really hard to handle in the opening stages. They then take them off because they need to spell them, and that level of intensity isn't there, and that way that you can play with two very dominant forwards isn't there. Then they bring them back on at the end and they very nearly turn the game. Do they need a little bit more than that? I heard some criticism from Hull fans of their halfbacks that they don't do enough.
It's probably the game's about momentum, and when those two are on you, they are a different team. Saints are better at this now, but I thought when they ever used to take Alex Walmsley off, they dropped down a lot of pegs. Roby's not as effective. Roby, he's been arguably one of the best players Super League's ever produced. He's not as effective when Walmsley and Graham was on. So Graham's not there now. Saints have probably got another one or two in there. So there's no doubt there is. I think Satay looks a bit fitter actually than he did at the start of the year, but sometimes that can roll against you if they don't have, and it depends how much ball you've got as well. So I think there's no doubt the game with momentum, the game becomes easier. The halfbacks are doing well. When they're not, they have to be a bit mundane. I think all have always seemed to be building. They've been building for a long time. I think probably the stature of a few of their middles aren't as big and as powerful and workmanlike, and I really like watching some of them play, but they're not the same structure as and there's not too many of those big blokes around.
Jack Wellesby's try. Regan Grace. They're great to watch, aren't they, Saints? Chris says he plays a whistle, then leave it to the ref. If Farge had done what he did, hadn't done what he did rather, Wolf would have dropped him from the side, and rightly so. Exactly. Michael, however, on YouTube doesn't agree. That Farge try was sad, shouldn't have happened, feel sorry for everyone. People upset that Farge celebrated after the try. What's he supposed to do? I don't know. He's not supposed to know exactly how bad Josh Griffin's injury was. It's just...
Or how the ball played. You don't stop and lean down and go, before I pick this ball up, how are you doing?
You're all right, yeah.
He was 10 metres, 15 metres from the try line.
Yeah.
As soon as he picked up the ball, he knew he was going to score. He's in a semi-final. What was it?
The ball went backwards, didn't it? What if the Hull player picked it up and ran the length?
Well, there you go.
Would all the people be...
I don't think we should focus too much on that, but clearly it's a talking point. Yeah. Jack Wellesby's just signed a new deal with St Helens today, which is fantastic news. We'll talk about junior supply line of talent soon, because you are the expert. They've got some really exciting players, Saints, and they are a lot of people's second favourite team because of the way that they play.
Yeah, I like when they're on front foot. I think there's part of their attack which at times I'm thinking, come on Saints, come on, get these players, get these outside backs in there, but they've got to go through the process. I do like them when they're on fire. I think they, and like everything else, you get momentum, things get a lot easier. I do like the young lads. I think what I do admire about Saints, a bit like probably what Leeds have been more so of old, was the level of juniors they bring through. You start looking at some of those players and you can imagine them being our stars of the future, our England stars, or if Great Britain ever comes back, they could be in there as well.
Because I thought Lewis Dodd had a big impact when he came on as well, and he's not a natural hooker, but he gave them a different dynamism out of half, got them on the front foot again at a time when the game might have been slipping away from them. And
again, for young lads to have an impact is a huge thing. Traditionally they're probably there to plug a gap until they put Roby back on, or they put, but from to contribute at such a young age, you can see that the quality they've got. And you just hope that they're injury free and that they get an opportunity, and I think that's part of it. I think Saints have been really good at that, been finding a way for these lads to get appearances. I know there's injuries and all that, and the squads are probably aren't as big as what they used to be, but it's okay playing in, well, they haven't hardly been playing in the academy, but to get into first team and get that experience, it's huge. And
it seems that a lot of teams now are playing both of their hookers at the same time, so when Roby does come back, he goes in the back row. We've seen it with Matt Parcell when Jez Litton's kept on at Hull KR. Seen it when Danny Houghton comes back on at Hull, and they might keep their auxiliary hooker on the field. Is that a change that you're happy with, or is that just a combination of these are the rules at the moment?
I think it's with the back to zero. It allows you, obviously, trying to look for that spark and to just go, and I think that's probably what's changed a little bit. Of some players are different. They can be like a running forward as well, but most of them, they're just there to speed the game up and keep it quick and to try and get more possession.
We need to, as we've already said, get well soon to Josh Griffin. Faye Gaskin as well, in the most freak of injuries. To do your knee while celebrating a try. I shouldn't laugh, but it's just the most ridiculous circumstances. And she was so hard on herself on Twitter afterwards. And I was going to reply and think, no, because you just make it worse. Just a terrible situation. But your team won, and you were part of the reason why they won, because you set up that first try, and it was
a very important try as well, because it came after a lot of York pressure. But that's what you were saying about luck.
Yeah, that's right. You don't know where it's going to come, and jump up and bite you. And unfortunately, it's a great pass you put in there. It's just right at the line, right in foot, perfect. And why shouldn't she celebrate? And just as that camera angle, just as I saw it, I went, oh, I know how that feels. I felt so sorry for her.
In terms of the second semi-final, clearly we can talk about how disappointing Warrington were, but what a great story Cass turned out to be. The week before, not a chance, not a hope, probably best you don't turn up and embarrass yourselves. The next thing, perfect first half, playing at Wembley.
Well, there's no doubt Casford are the best attacking side I've seen. I like a bit of Catalan as well, but I think Casford, when they're on, they've got the best attack. I think Daryl's done a great job. But yeah, from the point of where even their own supporters as well, as people, they should go, I'm like, hang on a minute. So we know there was plenty of players missing the week before, and they did have an eye on that one. But I've probably, and I'm not the only one, probably thought Warrington have probably had a soft underbelly for a little while now. This is not just this coach. I think they play some brilliant stuff, and you think to yourself, they're on it, they're going to do it, and then they just got blown off the field. They showed some guts to come back, but it was gone by then.
Brave selection putting Gareth O'Brien in at scrum half, because clearly Richardson has been the selection. Didn't have a great game against Leigh, but that's Darryl, isn't it? He's just picking horses for courses, and
yeah, I think you have to weigh it all up, and I think the defensive display, I think, probably edged it. I don't know. I'm thinking that's probably the one with Darryl. Thinking a semi, we'll have to defend a bit better than we did, a lot better than we did. And then you're weighing up the positives. Got a great kicking game, Richardson. He's a nice little kicking behind the line. He's good at all that, but he's got to weigh that up, hasn't he? And he made the right decision.
Jordan Turner clearly was the pundits' man of the match. Always did when he scored tries.
Yeah, that's right.
But Niall Evans, one of the best fullbacks in the competition at the moment, well, made a huge difference.
Yeah, I think he's got that pace to him, hasn't he? He's not. If I think about him, what we've got now, we've got a lot of halves playing fullback, haven't we, who pass, and he's not. He's a run first, and he's always an handful. And his pace gets him out of trouble and gets him into good positions. I think he's in form. Of course, he is. He's a different style of fullback to what's around, because there's, like I say, it's probably more of their half-backs now who have to run a hell of a long way. But yeah, I think he's on form.
In terms of the big players, and obviously it's easy for us to say sat here who the big players are. It seemed that Cassie's all sparks and Warrington's didn't again. And they've been through a period whereby you've wondered how they're going to gel and who's going to be the the lead organiser on the field, and they seem to have sorted that out over the previous 2 or 3 weeks. But that first half, you got the impression again that they didn't really know who was bossing the game, so nobody did.
No, I think there's no doubt they've struggled with that, and it's okay being able to recruit people and spend lots of money, but are they gonna gel together? I think those sorts of things, Phil, start to come apart when you're under pressure. It's all easy when everything's going your way and you're hammering teams, and you're going to Salford as they did and run up a score, but it's not that. Semis are not always what you dream about. In fact, most of the semis I played in weren't the ones you dreamed about, apart from the result. Hopefully, they're not that sort of game. You're going to be under pressure. You're going to put yourself under pressure. How do you deal with that? How do you drop back into a safe mode or whatever that is to get the game won? Cass were brilliant attacking wise, but if it was dull as dishwater, they'd have taken that. But they drop back into what they know and what they've practiced, and Warrington just look like they don't know where to go. They're trying to find the lower gear to get them going, and they don't know how to do it in those sort of games, and that's why we're probably saying it's their year. They may kick on, and it might inspire them to, but at the moment they feel like it looks to me they're pulling in different directions.
So Darryl as well as anybody. Played with him, played under him. How important is this Wembley final for him? Because the one thing he wants to leave Castleford with is the trophy that they deserve for the 8 years. Does that put pressure on them, or does that make them even slight favourites? Because I think we've got the final that, with the greatest respect to the Holland Warrington fans that are watching, we will get an open and exciting final. These two teams cannot play 5 drives and a kick.
No.
So you would hope that we're going to get a spectacle. How do Cass play it between now and Wembley? Because clearly they need to preserve the players that they think are going to win it.
Yeah.
But all of their eggs are then in that basket.
Yeah.
Does that put greater pressure on?
I think it does. And I think the chance to win this trophy, or win a trophy, this is the strongest one for them. Just because the strength of depth, the depth of the squad. Because you're going to get the odd bump, and an injury just can't be of the few players. It could be a massive thing. I think they have got to. It will build on them. It will build on them. There's the nightmare of the grand final. Obviously, the build up to that added to that, but it's not a nice.
But there's also a cup final as well in 2014.
Yeah, that's right. And that they've got to the top of the mountain and they've not been able to raise a flag twice, have they? They've got there, arguably not the Wembley final, but definitely the grand final. They're the best team in the competition by far. That was the moment. They'd done all that building, they'd kept all those players, they'd gone under the radar, they all came to a point together. The Zach Hardacre thing happened the week before, and then Leigh strangled them. They just strangled them in the final. Now, do Saints think, right, this is the way we're going to do it? We're going to sit there, we're going to turn them round, we're going to sit and look and wait for them to make an error and let all them demons start to come out. I wouldn't want to do that myself, because I think I can't see Cass just going, like you said, direct. It's not November, it's not going to be wet or cold. It's going to be summer. It's going to be dry. So
and the Saints haven't won it since 2008, which again, when you think about all the cups they won in the early part of the 2000s, it's a long time. Some of those players now again would like to put a Challenge Cup winners medal with their grand final rings. I don't know how you call this. I know we're sort of a month and a bit out, and there's a lot of games to be played, which is a worry.
But there's still all the talk around Saints and Cass, whatever, the lads, they are available on the phones, but they're filling up. They're going to the park. That people will be asking them about Wembley, and there's pictures. I've even seen Saints under the stand there where we've been over. They've got pictures of those old teams and the players with the Challenge Cup. There's still the romance of the cup within these towns, more so for Cass, I think, just because it has happened recently, but it doesn't happen as often for them.
I know this is Blackpool Borough, and Cass wore amber on that day, but this is superhero Kevin Sinfield in 2014 just kicking the ball to touch over and over and over again. Over and over and over again. Mark says, should Powell play the same side at Wembley? I guess in the next few weeks, Danny Richardson's going to get a chance to try and play himself into that side, but it's going to be difficult to dislodge that partnership we saw on Saturday.
I think the problem that every team's got is we're hitting a period of some midweek games as well. And there'll be the England representative game where Saints and some cast players will be involved in that. It's just how you manage to get to that day to have as many of your key players fit, which is why it's probably too early to start talking about who might be favourite and who
I
isn't.
almost shouldn't ask this, should I? But with that representative game, with it being against the combined nations thing and not Australia and whatever, if you were coming up to a cup final, would you be tempted to have a bit of I've got a bit of a groin strain, a bit of a hamstring, I can't come and play?
You can only ask the person who's played club and international rugby.
Because with a World Cup on the horizon as well, it's a tricky one.
To be perfectly honest, I don't think the players will make the decision. Because I wanted to play in everything. That's what you do as a player. You know the risks and all that. You want to represent your country, or you want to play for the All-Stars, and you want to play in the final. You want to do all that. You want experience as much as you can. I think the coaches or the bean counters will be how many players. I know there's a cap on how many you can have, but
well, it's 6, but that's that's almost half your team. And you look at Saints in particular, all 6 are going to be selected on one side or the other.
That's right, and I think there's going to be a few niggles just keeping a few out. I mean, I remember playing in the Yorkshire-Lancashire game, and we turned up, and there must have been, you had to turn up for a medical, and there were 9 players got back in the cars and went, and they were like, right.
What do you go through as a player in Wembley week? Because you've been there as the youngest ever player, and you've been there slightly older and a bit more experience and understanding of what it's all about. Can you prepare for it?
You can prepare for empty Wembley, like what Leigh had in Salford. But no, I think, and I don't know how many people are we going to be able to have in.
They're hoping 40,000, but we won't know until we go up to level 4 or not.
Right. So if we're banking on that, it's not so much that. It's one is media's everywhere, which is not as used to. There's more of that. You've got demand for tickets. You've got all that. You're getting people. I haven't spoke to you for 3 years, but. I'll see if we can get some more. There's all that. It's a different level.
And there's leaving on the Thursday, and there's staying at a hotel, and
having a walk round and all that. I mean, it's brilliant. Don't get me wrong. I mean, we're talking to some of the older teams that went in the 70s and 80s. Some of them used to go a week, or they'd go to Blackpool a couple of days, and
they'd go dog racing the day before,
they'd be all over, and they'd be on
go to a show and
have a few beers. Like, what? I mean, I remember my first Wembley. I think it was Bisham Abbey. I think we stayed, and there was all kinds of things outside, tennis courts and croquet lawns, and me and Graham already had done a lot. We'd done everything. We'd get to bed. We played tennis at something like 9 o'clock on a Friday. It's more emotionally draining than the actual game. You walk out, it's red hot. That's another thing. It's all the other things going around you. Your family are down or whatever. You're up in having a weekend. You're training on different places. It's a great experience, and I wish I could do it again. But it's not normal, and if you've not experienced it, it can flatten you.
You played at the old Wembley as well, the old configuration of Wembley, where that walk from the dressing room was must have felt like 3 hours to get to the middle. They don't have that anymore.
No.
But that, as a young kid, must have played with your nerves.
Well, it did. I had some players in there. Ellery Hanley. The stories about me. I was in the academy in the A team for a month really. We're playing like 3 games a week because they didn't have enough players. But I got in the first team, and I walk in the first team dressing room, and there's one space next to Ellery Hanley. They're all sat down. There's from Alan Tate going through Kevin Iro, Craig Innes, Scoey, who seemed 50 years old then, No, he did, because I was 17. There's an old man, but he was still relatively young. And there's one place next to Ellery Hanley, thinking, I can't go and sit there. Anyway, beckoned me over, sat next to him. He was brilliant the day before at Wembley for me. He just pulled me to one side. He was mates with Sean Edwards, and he just said, listen, there's 2 things you need to concentrate on. One is get your head down on the way out because it's going to be loud, and you don't start looking up there because you have a game to play. And then the other one was, he said, they're going to test you straight away, so you get ready. So get your head down, think about catching a ball. They're going to kick to you early, and they did. It went behind. I caught it back around the shoulder, and I've turned around off. So I run like 40 metres. I think I've actually got a friend of mine, when Wembley got pulled down, someone had bought a lot of all the pictures they hung around Wembley, and there's a picture of me getting tackled by Gary Conley. I think Phil Clark's in there, and it's that first run. So I've run all that way, and obviously it was May, but we weren't used to it being warm. I'm totally dry in my mouth, but it felt all my throat was, and I didn't shake that off for the rest of the game. We're just totally gone. You're just like as if we were playing in 50 degrees. But Ellery were great. That said, get your head down because you can lose it before you get there. Can't remember about meeting anyone or anything like that. Just kept your head down. Didn't know where the family was until after the end. But 17-year-old, great.
You had enough energy to score a try. Length of the field.
I can think of at least 10 people who want tickets from Featherstone anyway, so there's going to be no tickets left. So I've got a cap already.
Because you talk about how important the Challenge Cup is to places like Castleford. So if we move on to York and Featherstone getting to Wembley as well, we've been banging on for however long we've been banging on. The Championship and League One clubs need a pinnacle to play for. And whatever you decide is the future of the game and how it should look and who should be in it and who shouldn't and who brings to the party and who doesn't. A Wembley occasion for York, who haven't been there since the 1930s, and Featherstone, who have one of the great cup upsets in their armoury. The fact that those two sets of fans will get a share of the tickets no matter whether we can have a full stadium or not. How good is that for the sport? And they're going to kick off at midday now before the Challenge Cup final at 3. And
I felt for the ones before and afterwards. I think it can galvanise, because the thing that is huge about our game, and we forget a lot about it, is the tradition of it. How people used to, they'd go to the final regardless, the tradition of this. I know there's a million and one things more to do now. It's keeping that tradition alive. I hope it'll galvanise. It won't the York supporters who made it at that time, but it will for these young kids to go, the occasion to go and watch this, and maybe they'll aspire to be there. I think whether we give, we can't, but whether we give 50,000 tickets away to kids to inspire them to, this is where we need to go, this is why I want to do that, and get them young, I think it'd be a huge thing, but brilliant for obviously I'm sure they'll have a fantastic day out, and it's even better it's before, because afterwards.
And you've got...
I think we were the only people there, weren't we? Apart from
by 7 o'clock at night, I think we nearly got locked in.
No, we did actually, yeah.
But the fact that it's Catford and Featherstone have got there, so the Featherstone fans that are in there first will either be supporting Cass against St Helens, or they'll be
hang on a minute.
More likely wanting them to lose. But it adds to the whole occasion and the atmosphere. It gives you a reason to stay after your team's played. And I don't know about you, but the last few years we've been down there, you used to love playing Spot That Shirt. And there was a rerun the other night of the 1992 Test match in Melbourne, and you're seeing Hunslet shirts and Oldham shirts and 8,000 fans there, and being part of something that for whatever reason we've lost at the moment, hopefully you come back. But Wembley was that, I'll wander down Wembley Way and we'll pick out London Broncos and Workington and Whitehaven, and we've lost that, I reckon, because it's become a Super League game by another name with a trophy at it, and there haven't been enough teams that have wanted to be there or fans wanted to be there if their team wasn't. But if you add in the mix Featherstone and York, the whole occasion goes up a level.
I think clubs like that always seem to make it better for me, wherever they are. That there might not be 20,000 of them, but you can guarantee that they'll be enjoying it more than anyone else. I remember playing first time against Wigan and talking to some of the Leeds fans who obviously had a great day and we didn't win. But we're almost looking at the Wigan fans who, because they'd been there for the last 9 years, it was just part of what they did. But
and it was the pressure to deliver rather than the enjoyment of being there.
They didn't seem to enjoy it. The Leeds fans were looking at them in the buses going, look at these, they've won. Look at us. But because Leeds haven't been there since 1978, but those groups and I think that's why we need to encourage more of it. That, you know, I never went. The first time I went to Wembley, I played in it. I always give it to my dad, so I'm saying it again. He'd go with his mates when I were really young, and he said, right, we're going to go on the trip next year. Anyway, it got cancelled, so we didn't go. Around 34. Next thing, I'm playing. I took him. But yeah, I think it should be encouraged. And obviously, I know it's not going to be a full stadium as the tickets, but we need to think about how we do it. There was some really good stuff when I was coaching at Junior Celtic, where there was almost a cashback offer to the clubs. It was brilliant, and we did it every year. It was fantastic.
Here's a negativity. Kev mentioned this, and CG has mentioned it as well. What with stuff on social media at the weekend. Fev and Cass at Wembley at the same time is a recipe for disaster. It's only a small mind. Every club has a minority of morons.
It's how you deal with it as well. If you can identify people and make sure that they aren't at these big events, that's you know, you have to do that. That's all you can do. But yeah, we need to be mindful of it. I would rather celebrate that. I think this is the right way. Well, and you know what a great story York is. I think it was 1934 or something. They were last at Wembley. You know, there are a generation now of York fans that have never been part of that really big occasion, who will be. And I think you need to celebrate that rather than look at clearly there is the potential for something nasty to happen. I remember a semi-final in 1978 when Leeds played Featherstone at Odsal, and it turned into a battle at Odsal Top between Manchester United fans and Leeds United fans, because it was an excuse that if people wanted a fight, that was a really good occasion to have them. And
how wide was the pitch then? Was it?
No, it was actually the fight was on the top rather than around the buses rather than in the stadium. But there has always been a propensity for trouble. But I think the opportunity that presents itself is greater than worrying too much about that at the moment.
I want to know how is Kev, because obviously Saints, he's not a big fan of Wolves' style of play, but obviously the women won at the weekend as well, so he's kind of like glass half full.
He should be celebrating.
Amy Hardcastle.
Warrington fans, I don't know what they would make. I mean, we if we go back to that semi-final, are Warrington a real chance for the grand final before Steve Price goes, or have you seen enough in how poor they were in that first half? I know that every time you say how poor a team is, it detracts from how good Castleford actually were. Would you be concerned if you're a Warrington fan at the moment that when it gets to the big games, something's missing?
There's a soft underbelly, Phil. I think we've probably, not only thinking that last 4 or 5 years, that there's been a change of coach, there's been players come in, but there's still something not quite there with them. They can fix it before then, but if you're a Castleford or Saints, you're looking at them thinking, well, you're going to go, it's a big occasion again, we're going to just put you under pressure, and we'll expect you to fall to bits, so that you're almost, you're galvanising your opposition.
So
who's Mark Campbell going to lead out at Wembley?
Featherston Rovers.
Oh, sorry, of course he is.
And your mate, Mr. Flatman for York.
Yeah.
So exciting.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
We really are looking forward to it. There was a lot of talk about the Women's Challenge Cup final should be played at Wembley as well. I know that there's an issue with Wembley about how many games they'll allow, and then you're saying that maybe the kids can't play at Wembley because they're being shunted because we've now got the 1895 Cup. The women's game to me looked big enough to have its own occasion at its own venue, or works with the semi-finals, and you'd still have kids playing it, even if it's 10 o'clock. Just to get that experience.
I think an opportunity to play at Wembley. Wow, I think I agree with the women's game. That can only build, I think, with the final, and whether it stays with the semis for a while, but it should be built as an occasion as well as that. I'd like to see that grow, and then you can move it on. But I think it'd be nice to see some numbers there for the money as well. So I think. I think it's a real positive for the game. I think it's a great start.
In terms of the way the season's gone so far, before we get to talk about juniors and academies, something that you are an absolute specialist in, which is one of the reasons we wanted you. How do you think it's gone? Because we said early part of the season, we were a little bit concerned that the rules were making the game conservative. We then get a little bit of sun, everybody's throwing the ball around, we got some big margins. Talking about the COVID situation that's developed today, we've had our first game postponed, there's a possibility that a second one might go as well. Championship, you've still got that mix of full-time, part-time, you've got Toulouse that are in the same position that, you know, again, they don't know how many games they're going to play this year through no fault of their own and where they can play them. You can't have part-time players going over there because they can't afford to quarantine on the way back. League One, we've seen some shocks, you know, Rochdale beaten at Coventry. What do you reckon overall, without maybe looking at specific teams, where do you reckon we are?
In my mind, I think there's quite a lot of injury knocking around. I think there's a knock-on from last year. I think the stop-start issue with and then we started back and all the games we've played. I think there's people obviously on the ground will know a lot better than me, but I'd like to see the data of how much injury we've had and players not available, because it seems like we're almost in a little bit of a hangover from last year. Because obviously when players are in the cycle and the weeks off and they're back, and it just seems that it's taken its toll. Whether that was because they had to stop training and they trained a bit and then started playing, I feel like we're in a bit of an hangover from that physically. There's been there's been some good stuff. And I like the 6 again call early on, and then I start feeling it's inconsistent. And then you go in, well, there's just that team, that's all they're doing, because it bores me to death, completion. You know, the teams that I know it's part of the game and there's time to complete. I was frightened to death we wouldn't see an OKR this year as we did last year. You know, I loved watching them last year, whereas some of the teams bored me to tears. They were awful. But they were great, and I was thinking, is it because there's no relegation? Maybe they feel better now that they've got Leigh in there and everybody thinks there's no relegation apart from Leigh. Maybe that is, but I was concerned that it'd go back to lower denominator of, well, just keep completing, and eventually you might win. I think it's gone alright. I think the injury's taken its toll, Phil, and I think we need all the players we've got, the top players playing.
The worry though is we're approaching a period of the season now where we're having 3 games a week.
Yeah.
So the injury issue is going to get worse.
Yeah.
The throwing kids in because you have to rather than because they're ready is going to get worse. I don't think it is hindsight, but have we made a rod for our own back this year by trying to fit too many games in?
Of course. Again, we understand that. Oh well, we can have fans back now. We know where the game is. The game needs money. It needs people. It's like anything else. It needs people in to watch. But 3 games a week don't work. We knock off an Easter, then we add in another 3 Easters. It's like we understand that, but there's got to be a payoff, and we can't keep putting the players through this because it's only going to make them worse. And
you mentioned Leigh. We've had our first coaching casualty.
Steve's asked us on Facebook who's going to take over.
Well,
he thinks he's going to be Andrew Henderson. He wants Andrew Henderson and Leigh Briers.
Before that, how unfortunate is the incumbent who's lost his job, John Duffy? Because what could have been expected of him in the knowledge that I think it was December the 14th that they were told they were going to be in Super League. The recruitment market is as depressed as it's ever been, and even though Derek Beaumont's saying I've got money and I'll spend it, you've got to have somebody to spend it on. Should we be surprised that Leigh have lost their game? Should John Duffy take responsibility for that? Is it a panic measure? Or can you see it from Derek's point of view that they've probably got 3 or 4 games now that they've just got to win, and if they need to make a change, do it now?
I'm either the right or totally wrong person to talk about owners and how they behave, and I think either, which I can't see John Duffy being in this position, either he dead set, they all thought they had a massive chance, and there's some good performances, Wigan early on, they've run Wakefield close, but where did they expect to be? You've got to be honest, and while I'm sure John Duffy won't turn around to his players and say, fellas, there's a good chance we won't win any games this year. I'm sure he thought that, and I hope he had that discussion with his owner to to say, are you on the same wavelength here that this team might not win a game, might win 1 or 2, but it's not going to win 5 or 6.
But if we can get the 1 or 2 about against teams that are around us, it might be enough.
Well, they talked about beating those teams and they haven't beat those teams. So now what happens? So you get rid of the coach. Well, what? There's a Alex Ferguson can drop in to a football team like that and it's not going to make them win the European Cup. It's not going to happen. You've got to have good players, and you've got to have. I'm not saying they've got bad players. You just haven't got enough, and they've been brought in late. What did they expect?
What surprises me is that Gareth Carvell's gone as well, because again, they deemed that they needed a director of rugby. There seemed to be a good working relationship between the guy they brought in and the bloke that owned the club. What sort of recruitment did they think he would be able to? I mean, Nathan Peats clearly is not, again, at the top of the pecking order in the NRL, but he's a decent enough signing. When there's nothing available in the market, I don't know if they're, as you say, the weight of expectation is completely unrealistic. But you talk about Andrew Henderson and maybe Leigh Briers. If you're a young coach, you've been in this position. If you're a young coach and you're itching for your first job, why would you take one that the likelihood is you might not be there either at the end of the season or the beginning of next season, and where do you get your next opportunity? So if you're a young, can only an experienced coach now pick this up? Because if you were Andrew Henderson, I wouldn't be taking this job. He might be the right man for it, but I just wouldn't be taking it.
You won't go anywhere near it. And I class myself in the same bracket. I've probably done it twice, although I had a bit more at Bradford. I had in the first year, I had a bit more to go at. We finished 9th or 10th. It was like, we've done really well. We had 23 players. If you're going to go somewhere, you've got to be able to look the owner in the eye to say, right, well, we're in this together. I'm not fighting you, but if you want to run the team, then Derek needs to become the coach, because I know more than you. I know more about making a team and making it better, and individuals win that than you. You've got to enjoy what you do, and we've got to have a relationship. But there's another couple of owners around both divisions where you just go, what's the point? What is the point? Because you're either your ego's going to get in front of it, your mate's going to get onto you about your team losing. It's not and people think it's fair. There's nothing fair about it at all. What's fair about you competing with teams who have been spending $2 million a year for the last 10 years? You haven't spent that. You haven't got the infrastructure behind you. You haven't got the players to do that either. And you're expected to beat half of them. But it's not about just trying this. It's I'll try harder. It doesn't work like that. Those players will be given as much as they've got. There'll be some unlucky things here. They'll have injury there or here. But it's not about luck. And it's not about rolling your sleeves up and working hard. It's not about laying more Sundex than somebody else. It's there's a level here where the players are. Yeah, if you brought a few more in, they might have a chance. But these players aren't sat there. I would look for the shop when I witness. And if the shop existed, I couldn't afford to shop at it anyway. It'd be madness for any of those to take it. Really would be madness, because you might win a game. If you're not happy with that, you're going to be on your way. And then where you're going to be like me, you can't get an opportunity anywhere.
So Tim Sheens, who was linked, is clearly now going back to Australia after the All-Stars game, because he's got director of rugby job at his old club, West Tigers. I can't see at the moment who the next Leigh coach is going to be.
I seriously don't know why.
Because there isn't really anybody who is sitting in the wings waiting to take that.
Well, there's no career path in it, is there? Unless you could sit down and say, right, there's a 3-year deal, it's unbreakable, we will...
And if we get relegated,
we get relegated.
You're going to get £1 million still to spend, or whatever it is.
And then we'll go and we'll build again, we'll go and we'll do it properly. But there's no way that, the way the contracts are, and I do know a few things about them, how they can flick you after 3 months, and why would you do it? Why would you do it? Because you can't make a difference that way. You've got to obviously be able to get in there and try and support them. The other thing as well, so it's still a little bit early, but there's the other bit of what people forget, that the players are staring down the barrel of relegation. A lot of these players have probably been relegated before, and it's the uncertainty of their next year is the hardest bit in the world. I had the conversation. I remember I had to speak with this team the day we got relegated in Toronto to say, fellas, you're going to be all right. You're going to be all right. Feels awful at the moment. Something will come up for you. You're all young enough, and something will come up for you. You're going to get an opportunity somewhere else, and obviously most of them have, because there's not many players around. But it's a worse feeling in the world when you're on the cliff edge looking at it, knowing, well, if we don't get this one, well, we're on our way. And they're not at that stage yet, but they can see it, and people are talking to them all the time about it, and it drains you emotionally. The players are just constantly surrounded by it.
And 4 or 5 of that Leigh squad have come from Toronto, where they've had that uncertainty anyway. So it must be incredibly difficult to get them out. The old boys didn't help them this week by daring to beat them.
Jagging a win, I believe, is the phrase.
But the problem now for Leigh that it's Salford or nothing now.
Well, yeah, but again, you get to those stages, don't you? I remember at Bradford the day before I got sacked, actually, and it was Salford then, and it was we lost that game, and you could see I got players, and I won't mind me saying it, players like Matt Diskin who never made any mistakes and always made the right pass at the right time, second guessing himself. Matt Diskin, he won grand finals, international, brilliant player, hardest player I've probably played with. He's second guessing passing the ball. Chev Walker, people like that, been there, done it. That what had happened to them, not getting paid, all that emotionally, they got to that game. They're thinking, we'll get these. We've got enough, and just you could see it in them, edgy, and you could see after a try, you don't want it to get. You're almost creating £1 million game, and that's the worst thing you could ever do to people like that. It's there's drama, and it's almost cruel. It's cruel. You're going to do that to players. Players, like I said, generally they're all right. Staff, the way the game looks after staff is really poor. Physios, coaches, they're just like.
Didn't this happen last time Leigh got promoted? Neil Jukes was in charge and then moved off into some kind of other role soon afterwards.
But the thing is, it's eminently predictable and partly not their fault, because when you're bringing them in late and you're not allowing them to have the same level of resources what actually are you creating? It's almost like you've set it up to fail.
They've done it time and time again, Phil. What about Bradford?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you can come in, but you have to give half your money back, and not we're going to spend it round the game getting kids playing, and
we're going to distribute it amongst ourselves against you.
What are you going to do then? Oh, we're just going to spend it on the players. We're going to get more players. So
I don't know if we've depressed poor Steve now. He says Gelling's going home. So the already depleted Leigh team is down to the bare bones. I think there are only 24 left in the squad. It's like some players on loan. Everyone's doing it this week.
These players don't exist.
Yeah. Well, the level of the player pool, I guess, is something. I mean, I don't know if you want to go through the other games.
Well, we can do the Championship and League One in a bit. Let's talk about the big U-turn. This lady's not for turning, said Margaret Thatcher, but Rugby League's own Margaret Thatcher. They've U-turned. 2 weeks ago, you're out. Last week, you're back in. So I don't know what's changed in 2 weeks. Apart from some MPs getting involved and petitions and people getting upset. But whatever was right 2 weeks ago is apparently wrong. Was wrong is right now.
There's 2 issues with this, and one is, obviously your expertise is why you're here. The first is, what does that look like as a leadership? That you've spent the time you've had saying you've done what you've done, saying it's an open and transparent process, and you've looked at all the evidence and this is how it's got to be, and then the first sign of resistance, you've gone, well, actually no, it isn't, let's just cave in. So I reckon there's a whole leadership issue, and we talked about the way Ralph came over on Sky the other week. Now it looks like he's been thrown under the bus because he's been asked to justify something that they've now turned around and said, no, you're right, it can't be justified. So I think there's an issue for the game about what leadership looks like, and that is terrible. I think the other thing is, the underlying things that we spoke about when that first decision was made is something that you are first-hand involved in, and that is the level of and quality of talent that the game is producing at the moment. And I think when we heard people like Dave Rother and Paul Medley trying to talk about why the decision to only have 10 had been made, some of it was to protect the community game, some of it was to keep the quality threshold high, some of it was because participation levels are relatively low. You're involved in all of that. You've got your own elite academy rugby school, which is not league or union. It's just trying to upskill talented youngsters. You're involved in a community club. You've taken a side through from sort of under 13 to under 18 on that cusp of, are they all going to become open age players, or are they going to give the game up? You've been involved in academies at Bradford, bringing young talent through. What is the actual honest picture of where we are with the production of talent?
Yeah, there's lots of things here, Phil. That there's no doubt that and we've had a rough old 18 months, haven't we? Obviously, they think about numbers, are they there, are they not? I think there's no doubt. When I heard the decision, I thought there was going to be something else come in there. So I made a decision, and I thought, I'm waiting for this. This is the pathway of the right. Our focus is going to be this, isn't this? Participation would be a huge one. And within a framework of this, to get it back to wherever. I think there's a lot of things been around the game. It's been around for a long time. You know, even me going back to Leeds, because even then we still did a lot with the academy when we were coaching first team. But a lot of that, there was quite a lot of clubs not funding it properly. That there was using money other than generally putting it in the first team. I see that there's a lot more volunteers around that sort of level academy, whereas probably more paid people. And there was the one thing I wanted to hear from the RFL. It's almost I look at them and they've made a decision, and I want them to stick up for themselves to say, no, this is the reason why this has been made. Whoever it was, Bradford, OKR, Cass, these are the reasons. You're in red in whatever areas they are. You've been told or you've been tried to help them. This is the reason why we're doing it. I think they should do that. I think there's still with the leadership of the game. It still looks like to me the RFL are picking up some crumbs. And are Super League going to fund all this? Are they going to fund it? Are they going to fund academies? Are they? I hope they are, but they might not. Are they going to fund Championship League? Is it all going to change? Are you going to be able to have to fund your own? Because at the moment, I see Yorkshire Juniors from my own perspective, that there's lots of kids are on the roster, and I probably look at them thinking, you've got a big pot of money there. They need to get the community clubs involved. Whereas I can use an example. The previous community clubs, so when I was playing, I went back to my amateur club, Dewsbury Celtic. Obviously, a well-established club, 1879. But it lost its juniors. It had one team left, so I got back and I basically stole Leeds' little program. It was 4 primary schools, 6-week course. Got them from week 1 to week 6 was the game. They all played together. We went for one under-8s team. We ended up getting under-8s and under-9s. Alex Walmsley were in the first one. I'll drop his name in there. There were loads of others as well. But I had nothing to do with how good it is.
Everyone in this programme takes credit for Alex Walmsley. It's going good all the time.
I know going playing. But anyway, it wasn't about that. It was about us creating under-8. And we did it every year. Within 7 years, we had probably 8 teams, and it got to a point where there was probably about 13 teams at the top, and it ebbs and flows. The best one we ever did was Touch, where we then got, because you could do it quicker. You did it in 3, where you got 12 primary schools. This massive thing happened. That's the way to recruit these kids. The game is too tough. I mean, we've got these little men here now. I've got 2 boys. I had a conversation with someone. An ex-player saying Mitch was only about 2 and I'd got him some little golf clubs and he could whack it, and I didn't want him to play rugby. You just go and do your own thing. Anyway, wanted to play, and I'm saying to this ex-player, the daft thing about this is I'm going to say to my son, run into that boy as hard as you can and try and tackle him or run into him, and if you cry, I'll rub your head and go, that's what it's all about, son. Like, it's mental. You wouldn't do it. So it's tough as it is, so we need to find a way of getting more players into the sport to where they can look at it on TV and say, oh, I play that. It might be a version of it, but they don't have to be all singing, all dancing, smashing into each other and thinking about completion rates. we need to think of a way of doing that. And that I think it just needs joining up. I'm sure that the RFL haven't just gone, oh, this is what we're doing and nothing else. It looks like to me they've just got the tin hats on at the moment, and then eventually they'll start coming back. We're desperate for some leadership from them, but I'm looking at the Super League thing and thinking, I'm not sure who's calling the next phase. Are they ready to go and say, this is what we're going to do? We're going to get 10,000 kids playing within a year. That's the target. This is what I'd like to do. I'm not asking for a job here, but I'd love to have that, that Dave Brailsford number on the going up, just going up and getting more kids playing a version of Rugby League, and just keep doing that, and keep replicating, and then we'll get it bigger. But then the clubs have got to do their job, and obviously the stars in their area are going to be able to attract more people to that sort of thing than me, who no one knows who I am. But it's about where's the joined up thinking. I'm sure it's there. It can't be just, oh well, we're just giving up, we're just going to cut this academy down, and in 5 years time it'll be 5, and then we'll just have one, and then that'll be it. Well, good night. It won't be that, but I hope it's not. But we need to have a bit, come on, where are we going? And I think it must be waiting on funding. It must be. It's got to be.
In terms of the kids that you're seeing, not just in the team that you coach, but the ones that you're coming up against, what is the standard like at sort of top end, under 16, under 18? Are we getting kids who are well enough prepared to go into a Super League environment? How much damage is the scholarship scheme done, if any? Or does that need amending? Scoey, whatever people say, does keep ringing every day. And we do know exactly what he thinks about every subject. He's put forward his candidature to be chairman of Barla on the basis of the fact that he wants to bring back the Barla that he grew up in, and he doesn't want any kids signed before they're 18. He wants to have great experiences in the community game beforehand. But it's all very well looking at elite academies. Do we need to look at scholarships as well? Has that raided the game, do you think, too much?
Yeah, I think I understand why they do it, and there's benefits for it as well. There's some of the best people, and Paul Medley is one of these. Paul Medley sat on there. Paul Medley, arguably, is the best Eddie Youth I've ever worked with. Paul Medley, who signed John Bateman and Sam Burgess and all this, they are the ones. We can all see those players. You could be head of youth and go, that's Sam, I'm signing him. It's not them. It's Elliot Whitehead, who no one wanted, and he himself as an head of youth. When I went there and I said, Paul, wait to be head, come on, tell me about, and he's basically saying, I don't know, I can make a bit of a gamble, but I'm not sure. That's what we're doing. The worst ones I've worked, oh yeah, I know my players, and you're just thinking, you're just signing all the biggest kids you can get hold of here, that's all you're doing. You can't see all of them, you can see something in them, or it might be, and sometimes it comes through, sometimes it doesn't. But I think what happens to some teams, and there's a lot of movement around the younger age groups because they're desperate to be signed on, and they feel that if they don't get a scholarship, that's them finished. And we're losing players on the back of that, and then they're moving clubs. So they're moving to one team in the town because they get signed on from there, and it's like you're creating a town team, what we used to have before. You're creating it, but all these haven't got enough players now, so they've got 25, and the other 4 haven't got any players. So you've got one team left. It's just bizarre how there's an education needed for players and for parents and clubs about how we need to do it. And I think the scholarship can hurt some of those teams, because if they're taking, and I don't mean taking away, because they'll be getting better training, more training, which is essential as well. But if you're taking 6 kids away and there's only 7 kids left, what's that coach going to do with those 7? There should be something, another thing underneath that you can bring in. It can be a scholarship too. It could be, it should be something to try and mop up and help everyone, because you don't know where they're going to come from. And we just need to. The trouble we've got, and probably where we are, Phil, in North Leeds, the kids love Rugby League. They'll love the Rhinos. We all go to watch them, but it's probably the second sport. The family's got a bit more either in football and rugby union, and they fit it in around there, and they're not on the radar. They're not on the radar for Leigh because they've probably only just started playing at 13, 14. We've got some great players who really are better than some of the kids who are in. Who've been signed for academy, I know, because we played against them last year. But that can happen, and I don't think the foremost of their mind is to become professional. But there's lots of things. I think the numbers are the one. We just got to go at numbers, and then we've got to look at quality coaching and where's a pathway within it. And I'd like to see that there'd be second levels. I don't know if it's a town team or something, but we can encourage them to progress to the next little bit.
I think representative rugby at that age is huge, and even if you're 13 and you get to play for the City of Wigan or the City of Hull or whatever it might be, that's the only representative honour you ever get in your career. That's massive. You put on that shirt that equates to the colours of the professional team. Yeah. You can say that badge is you know you're representing that town. I think that's the level that if you'd have filled that in underneath the elite academies and said, well, someone is going to go to that kind of development officer into town structure, which I think is what Scoey felt really benefited him. And whilst there are certain things that you perhaps wouldn't want to go back to, that structure, we seem to have thrown the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah, I think there's a difference between us and Australia because they have it. They have rep rugby. The kids have come through, and whether it's a school or whatever, they've got that. Where ours probably one division, the rest are all a little bit, and some of the players that kick on are the ones that are up below. They've had to do a bit tougher. They might not have won anything, but they've come through, and I think that there's an hybrid of it. I was involved about 5 years ago with the Leeds thing. They piloted it. They did it almost like a city of origin, and they tried just to come together for like 6 weeks of training, and then they'd come together and have like North Leeds v South Leeds a game. Obviously they're looking at players, but it was more about let's see how it goes, and it was brilliant. It was brilliant, led by the club, because obviously now they've, like you said, they've got the badge. Mm-hmm. There's loads of kids there. They wanted to, obviously they weren't impressed, but it was more about Brian Mack spoke brilliantly. They'd gone through the coaching and they came to Edinburgh, and Brian Mack spoke to the kids and they spoke to the parents. He hammered the parents, who were brilliant, to the point of saying, I'm a parent myself, your only job is to support. I'm not looking at your children thinking he's going to be the next, and he's railed off his first team. Your job is just to support. It's not to have a go at anyone else. It's not to think he's this or that. My job when they come to us is different. It's to make sure that they're tough enough and all this, but your job is not. Yours to make sure that they enjoy it every day and just remind you of what your role is. It was great, and the players was about aspiring, and it was fantastic. It had to stop because it didn't fit in the framework.
But that was an RFL framework. It wasn't something that the club or the club's foundation didn't want to continue.
No, that's
in fact,
right.
I think they've rallied for doing more within that school's arena if they're allowed to do it. It's partly, I think, Sport England who fund it, saying we don't like elitism, however that is decided. So if you've got these town teams, somebody is deemed to be better than somebody else. But should we not have just turned around and said, this is what we need to do to get more people involved and stay in it longer?
There's two things. One is getting them into the sport, and then there's levels within that. And it's not going to be for everyone, but maybe you should have a couple of levels within that. So you I don't want to say A and B, but it's it could be develop and whatever it is. There should be a couple of levels, but one is numbers. Get numbers playing the games so they can look at that TV, and then you're more attractive to sponsors because you've actually now you can show that you've got 30,000 kids playing. As opposed to, I remember going on the bursary in 2012 to Australia, the RFL, and I went round the clubs and I was speaking to someone in Penrith. There were more kids playing rugby league in Penrith than there was in Great Britain.
So I'm going to put you on the spot here because I already know the answer to this question. But when you came back from that trip, which was a fact finder and an eye opener, one of the reasons you got the bursary to go on it was to produce a report for the RFL about how you thought junior rugby league should be structured. Has that report been acted on?
No. I sent it in. I did my bit. there's lots of things we did better than them. They just had more kids. It was more about getting more kids playing. So that's me thinking about touch and other things, because we're not Australia. We generally they're running around in freezing cold as well, so facilities are poor. So why is that kid going to get off the Xbox and come and go to, you know, a muddy field with one floodlight, roll around in mud? I loved that as a kid because there was nothing else. We didn't even have a floodlight. Sound like the Monty Python sketch now,
Brilliant.
the Yorkshireman. But
Brilliant.
no,
Someone with a torch.
but it was more about that. It was how are we going to this, you know, this next generation? How are we going to get them into the game? Not only look at it, but play a version of it and get them out of the cold. Let's get skills going. Because the reason why I started, I'll put it in the Rugby School of Excellence, was I'd been involved obviously at Leeds with the scholarship and doing bits of that, and maybe academy, and it started from there. I'm thinking we're getting kids who aren't really rugby players at that age. Some are, some like me, started at 6. We're getting others who come, they pick the ball up and they either grew too big for football or they just found this game and are massive, so they've put them in. Well, how are we going to get them upskilled? Well, we're not going to upskill them by playing the game. The game doesn't teach you the skill. It shows you how to play the game. Don't do this, do this. As a community clubs haven't got the time, once you start to try and get them to understand the game, and they haven't got the conditions to stand and pass the ball, feel the ball. They're not playing touching playgrounds anymore, you know, as there was a long time ago. It's all football, football's everywhere. Throw a bag of rugby balls on the field, the kid will walk in and kick it. That's what they do. They just do it. So we need to get our youngsters handling the ball, whether it's this big or this big, it doesn't matter, and playing a version of what they're seeing on that TV. And then we'll get them real young. And if they can pass, there's a chance. If they can't pass, they can only play 1 or 2 positions. And it's where the big fellas have to go.
Is it about philosophy as well? Because you see a lot of community rugby league, a lot of age groups. Are there too many, without being disparaging to anybody who's taking the time to bring the next generation of kids through, is the philosophy of enjoyment and passing the ball disappearing for some clubs? Is there too much of an emphasis on winning to adapting to the rules as they're currently played, that the big kids need to get the ball all the time and run up the middle? Is there too much pressure from the sidelines with parents, what you were just saying about Brian Mack, that it's got to be about intimidating kids to win rather than letting them standing back and letting them make mistakes more than anything? Because the thing is with a pass is it's either going to go to hand or it isn't. But you don't want to stop kids trying to do it, and the more pressure you put them under, the less chance they're going to do it.
That's right. Mistakes are part of the game, and that's, you know, I would actually speak to a referee the other day who was telling me about a game, and I'm just saying, why do you pull everyone in at the start? Parents as well say, there's nothing guaranteed than me making mistakes today. I won't make as many mistakes as you lot on here, or what you might get wrong, but we're all in it for the right reasons. I do it every time. I've done it, but I've done it as a coach. So I've had to pull both teams and say, listen, I'm not a ref, and I'll do my best, but we'll have a good time and all this. But yeah, there's a few things here. Is that my oldest son has played football and rugby league. So he's played football in the winter, rugby league in the summer. He starts to play rugby union, and obviously the last few years they don't have leagues. It's bizarre to me, you know, that there should be an element of competition somewhere, but not. They don't do it at 7 and 8. And although rugby league's been really good, they can't say can't say a score, or they can't, and they've made that a little bit older. There's probably something in there that there should be more of. You know, we should focus on getting how many games played. Really, that's the one. That's why I think that if every recruitment they could almost get a touch team as well. So you've got a physical team and a touch team, and he's just playing. It's the thing that we've got is, like I said before, you've got 2 things. You've got players and parents thinking you have to win. Johnny needs to win or else he'll get down. You know, I wish I had £1 for every game I lost. Fortunately, as a coach and a player, but it's not about that. It's about, you know, did you do your best? Did you enjoy it? Well, that's great. And what would you do better? Great, right, next time. You know, because the development bit is we probably play too many games before we've got the skill. But the one thing I wanted to do as a kid was play the game. The game, I couldn't wait for the weekend. You know, training was good. I liked training, but if I played every day, I'd play every day. I just loved it, and that's what kids want to do. But the focus again, I think we need a bit more education to coaching a little bit. Although you can't blame them really. They're bringing stuff down from they're seeing it on TV. I've even seen teams warming up as long as Super League teams. And they're thinking, they're 9-year-old. They don't need all this. They need a bit more than just getting on with it, but they don't need all this. And they're doing Super League warm-ups. Like, they've seen it and they think they're doing the right thing. And you know what? It's good to see that they're organised, but the main thing is, are they all getting a touch? Are they all... Because the trouble, part of the report was to say we're developing back rowers who aren't the fastest. They're strong, but they're not massively strong. They're not overly quick and they're not got massive skills, but they can pass the ball. We've got some really good ones as well. And that's because of... One is when we played in the winter, but the other one is generally the game's dominated by 3 players, maybe 4 players, but it's 3 players. If you've got some massive player, it helps. And he runs through everybody in the score form, we think we've won. It's the kids on the other side who are practising the skill. And my team's a real good one. It's gone under the radar. Some great lads. They've never been the biggest side, but they always pass the ball and try to have a go. And they've played some really good stuff. There'll be times they get beat, they'll drop some ball, and you know what, we've probably lost to some teams who aren't as good overall rugby team as us, but it is what it is. But they've all progressed, and the times when you think, oh, maybe I've not helped them enough there, and I should have done this, and thinking, hang on, we've got 20 players, they're still coming training. You know, they're not happy that they lost, but they're not coming. They're not. We've had one player in about 6 years who actually went to one of these clubs where he thought he was going to get signed on, and he didn't. But that was his parents' fault. That wasn't his fault. It's just silly. It's just the other bit is as well. You should play the game and enjoy it with your friends. So you've got these friends from your local area, wherever you are.
You grow up together.
You move
through together.
The thing is, I cherish those memories now. You know, the things that, I'll bump into people and say, remember that time we played at Stanley Rangers and we won 1-0 and it was total mud. It was an awful game. I did a bit of space and running, but nothing happened. Anyway, this lad he got a drop goal and everyone went, couldn't wait to get in the showers. You cherish that. We all, the times when we went to so-and-so with 11 men because he didn't turn up, and I worry for some kids who've been moved around a few clubs and then they just leave. They don't know you met it, and they just lose it. They just don't bother with the game, and it's huge. I think there's some of the things that should be celebrated. The people who've had a lifetime in the game and mean a lot to everybody. That's huge. It's huge that they've done it and they've enjoyed, whether they're a player, a coach, supporter, whether you are an administrator. They should all be championed because you've got some special people. We just seem to go around a long way all the time.
I'm just reminiscing in my head with the memories of managing. You'd have to believe me, you're talking about B teams. It could never have happened at any other point. In the year 2000 in Wakefield, there were enough players who wanted to play skater hockey, which is ice hockey on roller skates. So we had 2 teams at the 13 to 15 age group. And I was put in charge of this. I'm 18, 19 at the time. What a foolish decision. And I was in charge of the B team, who were, we didn't win a game all season. We drew 1 game, which was great. And I've just remembered in my head the moment where Jamie Van Bellen, and the surname is
part of the family,
indeed, scores the equaliser against Harrogate, and we draw 3-all. It's the only game we drew, and I just remember the celebrations we had. It was great, and that's what you need more of, is that joy. There is too much about winning and too much. I know winning's important. It is important at a point, but parents giving kids money for scoring tries, if you think.
I think the other thing that you sort of touched on as well is that when it comes to selection, we've gone for the biggest and not the most skillful. And that's partly because the Super League game itself, when it's gone full time, is looking for athletes. But we don't have to replicate that at the community level. That actually big kids have a role to play, but the rules that you should come up with and that's not to penalise
No.
what they can offer, but if that's over-dominating... I watched them, mentioned I think the other week, watched an under-16 game the other week where 6 again was used. And you looked at the physical disparity between the two teams. We shouldn't be playing this role at this level, because all you're doing is encouraging the team that is already physically bigger to overpower a team that wants to play a little bit.
Yeah,
and
that's right.
the team that wants to play a little bit should be equal, if not more valued than you just happen to be physically bigger at that age. And do we need to look at that as well, at the philosophies we're teaching?
I think so. I think it's part of the refereeing. I'm not having a go at referees here, but I remember some of the refs that we had when I was a junior, and the better ones, you always enjoyed it. They used to talk, and they didn't ref you the same. There were times that we'd be looking like we were going to hammer teams, and he'd be on the run going, now the forward pass, or when like, hey, come on, get it in the middle, or whatever it was. They found a way of coaching. It's about coaching. And I obviously see the referees, and they have to go through and they'll get assessed and all that. The part of the assessment should be, do you speak to players? Can you coach the game? Can you, that it should be that bit. Yeah, you could probably go 6 again there, but should you? Should you do that? There's another bit to it. It's I think with the physicality is a real positive thing within the game, but they're the players that get neglected. That's why I started the rugby school, because I was, like every other kid, I'd have been frightened to death by certain players who, we were 10 years old and he had a beard and he used to beat us up. And you were thinking, how's he got that big and how can I... But, that player, when we got to under 16s, I didn't recognise it the same player. He'd got nowhere because he kept running through everyone because he growled and everyone jumped out of the way, which is no fault of his own, but he never got taught anything else where he could have played a different position. He's now too small to play at prop or whatever he was, looks forward, because everyone's bigger than him. His physicality is probably a bit less than everybody else, and he can't pass, or he can't do this, or he doesn't really read much, or he doesn't know where to run, and we let those players down. So while we should encourage physicality, or you're 10 foot tall and they're 2 foot tall, can he pass? Does he know when to pass? Is it all about him just scoring 5 tries and you're winning 5-0 every week, or are you going to give a bit more? And that's the hard bit, and I've seen some good ones as well. I think there's a junior team who, I think they were like under 13, they had one, and they used to bring him off. So he'd score, they'd bring him off, and then he'd encourage him, and then he'd take, but he'd still do his bit, but they had to spell him just because it weren't right for him all the time, and it certainly wasn't right for the kids who looked up and higher than his sock. And it were like, I just thought, you've got it right, you're doing it right, and you're encouraging the player as well to, one, do your bit, but right, can we draw that man next time? And you could see him talking on the touchline. It was great to see. I just thought there's not enough of that. But you can't. Thing is, the kids as well, they're dead set want to win. Mm-hmm. So even if there's no scores, there's no publish, we still love the write-up. That bit's all gone now. But they love to win, and they know all the rules generally. They're not like most of them now. They know everything. They're 6 again or whatever. They'll be calling it out. But they know the score. They know they're going to win. But he's nice, but it's not the end of it.
Some social media.
Yes.
Alan has asked, and I'm editing this question because, of course, we're now in a new age. He's asked, are you still the youngest player to appear in the men's cup final? Because I think Holly Dodd is younger.
Youngest to not only play, but score. Mm. Yes, he is.
There you go. Because I think Holly Dodd was 16, wasn't she, when she played for Cass in 2019. So that's why I put it in, you see. Self-editorialising. On Facebook, who's Danny Richardson's agent?
I've no idea.
Because he's in the shop window apparently. So
no, at the moment he didn't play the weekend.
Well, he's in a boarded up shop window. I've taken 2 and 2 and added and made 4. So yeah. So there you go. He might not be playing for Cass in the cup final.
He's going to get plenty of opportunity between now and the cup final to play. Whether he can dislodge Gareth O'Brien, that's another.
Might have taken that decision out of the coach's hands. I don't know. It's an interesting time to do that, isn't it? Especially with a new coach coming in, who might have a different idea about things. I don't know. We took the emotion out of the academy debate there by not saying, "Oh, we're going to have an academy," because I did love Mick Morgan's letter in the League Express. I assume it's that Mick Morgan. There can't be another one, can
Is it written in Broad Yorkshire?
It says, "I can't speak."
It's definitely that one.
For the record, the last series victory in Australia, the 1970 tour, consisted of Castlewood players Derek Edwards, Alan Hardesty, Keith Heckworth, Dennis Hartley and Malcolm Riley, plus 2 more Castlans who came through the system, Roger Millwood and Johnny Ward. I rest my case. Yeah, unfortunately that's 50 years ago. Mm-hmm. And we haven't beaten them since.
You know what? Dougie Lawton was told me, it was the one after, they're playing that one.
You can't mention Dougie Lawton on this podcast because he's not here.
I need to mention him in a minute, by the way.
He talked about when I'm sure it was a Great Britain tour, it might even be when he played over there, and he said he'd done something with the club he was at, and he said he went out and there was all these kids playing, and he said he come away, I think he was retiring, going to coaching, thinking that's when we know the test. He said some of the kids who were playing, the size and the skill of them, they said we had nothing, this was pre-Barlow, nothing. He just said, and these were telling me, this is 20 years ago, saying the stuff they were doing then were miles ahead. We had nothing. They had that many kids, he said, unbelievable.
Good old Dougie. He was right again. You mentioned that 1992 test, and just to turn this back full circle, I just flicked it on the other day, and it was at the point towards the end. Scott's gone down injured. He's about to play the ball. He's holding his hamstring, and Eddie's he's apoplectic in the commentary box. He thinks Scott's leg's about to fall off or something, and he's really upset. And then he gets up, plays the ball, walks off as if nothing's happened. He's like, might be a bit of gamesmanship there from the Great Britain captain. He's like,
I had to ring him after I'd watched it again and just say, what were you doing tackling? He did more tackles in that game. Like Meninga breaks up the middle and he tackles him. So what are you doing?
A great game.
Pure adrenaline.
Scully's tackling tips?
Yeah, exactly. Don't do it.
Did he pass his 11 plus? It says it. Well, I assume not. I don't know. We'll have to ask him.
He didn't go to grammar school.
No. So. And the letter that mentions Mark Wright commentating on the Rugby League, Bob Chappell of Helmsley. Mark Wilson.
Ex of this parish.
Yeah. No, he's still of this parish.
Oh, no.
Don't say ex, because now, no.
He's doing the Euros for the next couple of weeks.
He's still part of the family.
He's still always be part of the family.
Yeah. On someone moaning that the Challenge Cup wasn't on the news at 10, but some cycling was. Perhaps Ralph Rimmer will be better tackling that issue instead of restricting Leeds academies. Let's just put the BBC News and say, I know you had like the Women's Cup final on and the 2 semi-finals on national television all day, but you didn't put it on before like skateboarding parrots. Oh well. Apparently, Danny Richard's been offered to Super League clubs. Who needs him? Who needs him? Does Leeds want him? Need a half back?
They're linked with everybody.
Yeah,
especially
if
they're a half back.
Well, that's why I've linked you with him now. I'm
Blake Austin,
officially linking you with him.
Any
Blake
half
Austin,
back who's out of favour, has been linked with Leeds.
You're going to pick him on the win. What about Kevin Tinfield? You off to Leicester?
If he went,
yeah,
and clearly it's been rumoured in sources that there's more to this than just somebody saw him having a coffee with someone who once worked. That would be a sad indictment of where Rugby League is at the moment. Because whilst I haven't spoken to him about it, I don't know if you have. If talent like Jamie Langley and Kevin Sinfield thinks that there is a better option in rugby union at the moment, I think that says something about where we are in rugby league, and that would be sad, I think.
Yeah, certainly, I think. If you saw, obviously, what Kev did for Rob and the interest and all, I'd have took one look at that and thought, right, we need to get him in RFL. Sorry, Gary, can we do something?
Which he was in and got disillusioned with.
Used to say, even if you just got him on Celebrity, got him on any of all those things.
The spokesperson for the game.
To say, question time, you'd be all that, because he's opening doors that people can't do, and you know whether he goes and takes it, I don't know. And I say I've only heard rumours myself, but it would be a loss. But where are the jobs? Where does Jamie Langley go? Does he get the league job for 10 times as less as what he could? I don't know what he's getting paid at sale, but where are the jobs? Where are they? Where's the
career?
Where they're going to go?
What happens to John Duffy next? You know, that's the.
Or even John Dutton after the World Cup is over. I was going to bring in an international element because I think it's important for talking about junior development and finding new talent, and it's something that we've spoken about before. You were passionate to play for Ireland. There's an untapped source of players, administrators, supporters in Ireland. There's some people on the ground there doing some great things with the community clubs they've got. But what's the process of getting those players into a semi-professional, professional environment, or setting something up over there that brings the best of what they've got? So if you're talking about a development officer for the sport in Ireland, who you let's say you're going to pay 30 grand a year to, which is not a huge amount of money, but is given a mission over the course of 3 or 4 years to put development and talent camps together, with the idea that we're already going to put a team representing the Emerald Isle into League One in 2025, say, if there is a League One in 2025. Yeah. That has to be a proper use of resource that everybody will get something out of, because we've seen with Ronan Michael going to Huddersfield and now he's out on loan in the Championship. I'd barely touched a ball, I'd barely heard of Rugby League 3 or 4 years ago. If he is out there, there are a lot of other kids out there. Rugby Union is contracting in places like Ireland and Scotland and Wales in terms of the amount of kids that are going to become full-time professionals. So even if the top 50 kids in Ireland are contracted to the Irish Rugby Union and Leinster and Munster, kid number 51 is probably good enough to be playing Rugby League or be looked at. If somebody said to you, there's a development officer role in Ireland, you need to go there 4 or 5 times a year, you need to run camps at under 13, under 15, under 17, and it's about talent identification, it's about bringing enough of that quality through to form a team in 3 years' time. Should we be doing that? Is that an opportunity we're missing out on?
I think it's huge. I think the public school boy pathway, especially in Dublin, is so strong. It's providing most of the Irish. In fact, Ireland they're still looking in England for any kind of heritage. There's not enough, but the amount of lads playing rugby union in Dublin throughout these schools, and they've got programs, they've got people who are getting paid a lot of money, conditioners, they're almost semi-pro when they get to their older age of that. It'd be huge for the numbers. It does look like we can't even afford to do it with his own patch at the moment, but for the game and you know, for rugby players, you know, I've got ex-colleagues who are working over there who are looking at some of their players going, he could be a lead, he could be a lead. Obviously he's this or that, he hasn't played the game, but we've got no vehicle to do it. There was a lad who went on loan from Doncaster Rugby Union when I was there and trialled with Leeds, scored 2 tries and there's enough there for him to Briscoe was injured the way Leeds didn't do it, but they should be looking at those players as players there, but especially in Ireland there's an opportunity to grow the game again. We've had development officers, and I keep seeing stuff about the women's game in Ireland and how it keeps. We just need to have a go, because there's a rugby playing community like Wales, but are at a standard where they've no real pathway. It stops, because obviously they're the provinces, but the academy, it stops then, and these players have come through at a level who have had, you know, training a lot and playing games, and we just need to tap in. We need to make it easier, is my point. Is that I think it was Kev there had to jump through hoops to get the rugby union lad to be able to trial. You had to get him to change a rule. It was unbelievable. You'd have thought with reserves, that's what because how do you look at them? You think, and probably going back to Dougie was very good at picking the rugby union, but they're internationals, they weren't the next lot. We need to think about how we're going to get them in. There will be no salary cap, they should be in
and the thing about, if it is the cost of a development officer who doesn't need to be based there all the time, if every Super League club put in £5 grand, that's paying for the post. But every or you know, 10 grand, whatever it is, it's not false economy, because it only needs one player for each of those clubs to come out of it. like Huddersfield have already found.
Well, you'd run, wouldn't you? You'd run almost.
That's
like
got to be the cheapest
that's
source
right.
of talent that any of these clubs can invest in.
That's right, and you'd look at it. Probably, I'm thinking of like Everton or someone who almost their academy. They've got to sell on, but that's it funds it by producing. So obviously you're going to have to do it. It just again you get excited, like you talked about the internationals. You sort of love that part of probably the old Open Rugby or Forty20 now, but. Looking at where the next game's being played, obviously they're always fighting amongst themselves. That's just the Rugby League thing, isn't it? Wherever we go, we set up. You think it's going to be brilliant, and then
we've got to have two governing bodies.
Then there's two governing bodies, and they fight like cat and dog. But I used to love that part. I still do. Still, when that pops up and saw the game and thought, brilliant. And we're looking out there all the time. There's Ireland there who've got a big pool of rugby players, especially around Dublin. It's not the same in the other provinces, but strong there.
But I also think that if we took an international to Dublin, with Ireland, say, playing England, two nations that the public would immediately buy into because it doesn't matter whether it's Rugby League or Tiddlywinks, they've got a vested interest straight away. We're missing it. I mean, the World Cup in 2000 had a game in Ireland, but it was played on a Wednesday night.
Yeah.
But when
I went to that game.
So did I. There's you played in some Ireland teams, admittedly of heritage, because there wasn't anything underneath it, but we never capitalised on it.
No.
You know, 2000 quarter-final, 2013 sell-out at Huddersfield, even though everybody knew England were going to win by 40 points.
It was brilliant. I went to that game as well.
It doesn't cost a lot
I
to build on the back
I thought
of
they'd have done it off the back of the World Cup. So Ireland, although they won the games, they didn't get through. But I'd have thought that the next one would have been, especially when Great Britain was coming, you'd have gone, right, we're playing England-Ireland while that crop were together. Get that on. Let's make it happen. Again, no, it's not as easy as for me to say it, but why not?
But unless that's part of a whole policy of the game as one moving forward, you know, we've got this this England against the All Stars, you know, and again, I get Sean Wayne this particularly wants to get the highest quality of opposition that he can in the one game that he's got. But why are we playing Super League that night as well? Why aren't Ireland playing Scotland or
I thought it was a
Wales playing France?
Well, brilliant. And then when I hear that, I just think you just diluted your own programme.
And that's not a money thing. That's again two people fighting
that's right.
against each other. I just think we're missing an opportunity that there are people like yourself who have got the experience of development and coaching at the highest level. And there are so many others of your era out there who can do it and want to do it and want to put something back, that we just need to find a way that you can, even if it's down in the southwest of England or putting camps on, you know, getting people who are recognisable names to put on elite camps or just even development camps to see what we've got. We just don't do it
There's
enough.
probably nowhere to go. There's, you know, there is, and like I said, John Duffy might go another one now, but there's nowhere to go. There's no other. I've worked in rugby union as well. There's different levels. You get to a level, then you can have a job for 30 years, and you'll get paid at a certain level. And we've got nothing. So you have a go. You don't get, you get sacked, whatever it is. Where do you go then? Because some coaches don't do juniors. They don't, they haven't done that bit, and it's a different type of coaching. But where do they go? What opportunity have they got? Unless there's, down the leagues and there's opportunity there. We're going to hemorrhaging coaches a lot. There's a big long list who've gone to rugby union, and we'll probably keep doing it because we've got the knowledge. They're starting to wake up to the knowledge of the skill and the other bit, but they've got different tiers. Although they're having a tough time like us at the moment, we don't look after. And I'm not saying I should have a job. I'm not saying that. I'm saying there's no other, way to go. Then there's no. How do you contribute to making the game better? That's ultimately what you want to do as a coach. You want to make the lads have a good career, and you want to contribute to the game. We had a volunteer, which I've done, and I'll continue to do. I'm sure there's lots of people. But is there another step? Is there another where it kicks the game on?
You never know where the next superstar is going to come from. And I've said his name before, and it's not our sport, it's ice hockey, but Liam Kirk from Maltby in Rotherham at the World Championships, finished as the joint top scorer against the Canadians and the Finns and whatever, with 7 goals, and made it into the All-Star team. As Great Britain won, I think, a game, so we'll win the World Championships again next year, the top division. Some lad from Rotherham, drafted by an NHL franchise. Could be an Irish player who is the next big breakout star for Rugby League.
How do you know if you don't look for it?
I tell you who should be getting the hardest person in Rugby League award this week, and I've just remembered because I've gone looking in the paper. Rebecca Rotherham, when she got absolutely smashed by Rhiannon Marshall twice within the space of about 5 seconds, then just got up and played the ball.
Dave Rotherham's daughter.
You won't be able to see her play this week because Saints aren't playing because they've got the COVID, so they're not playing this week against Wigan. But hopefully, fingers crossed, at the home of Rugby League on Sunday, 12 o'clock kickoff, Wakefield versus York, which
might be on Twitch now.
Had Wakefield beaten York in the first game of the season in the Challenge Cup, which they didn't, how things would have been different. That's followed by Castres versus Leeds, which will be good. Looking forward to that. And Huddersfield versus Warrington, which still might be on. I might put that on Twitch instead. Which would be a good game for the support on Twitch, because that will be a good game, because they're two evenly matched sides. They might move that on to 12 o'clock. That's what they might do. So yeah, I don't think you can go watch those games yet anyway, so it'll be good. I'm sure there's something else I was going to say about the women's final, but I can't remember what it was now. Now says Gavin, don't go implying transatlantic talent might be a thing. Well, obviously the USRL and the NARL have copied the RFL and Super League model of having 2 warring factions against each other. Well, they're friends now, aren't they? I mean the RFL and Super League.
They love each other. They love each other. Please, can we have some money? They said.
Yeah. Before I get into the results of the Championship and League One, was there anything else news-wise that we can think of?
No.
Apart from we can now work out where Danny Richardson's going to go, which is, I don't know. Oh, the England kit. You either love it or you hate it. It's not a thing to get upset about.
Either buy it or don't.
England don't have an identity, do we? Because it's not always been Great Britain, but it's been by and large Great Britain. England come along in the mid-90s again as a thing, and that's the kit they had in the 95 World Cup, and that's what we've got now.
Go on a St George course on there. I expect it to be that way.
It's red and white. What did you expect?
It's got too many adverts on. Well, let's have no adverts on, and it costs £100.
That means we've got some sponsors.
In the Championship, Bradford beat Newcastle 31-12.
But Danny Bruff's got a potentially long term.
Oh, has he?
Yeah.
That's not good. He kicked 4 from 4 and a field goal. Halifax beat Sheffield 46-12.
Disappointing start to the season for Sheffield.
Yeah, very, because they were buoyant pre-season. But obviously not gone that way. 2 wins from 8 for them. They're on 37%. Obviously Wakefield now flying high, 33.33% recurring. It's all going well. We're the only team with a recurring percentage now in the Super League, so that's something to put on a t-shirt. Toby King might sign for us with that kind of thing. Oh, they can't now. Doncaster beat London Skulls 46-12 in League One. Having been 12 all at half time. Hunslet beat Rochdale Hornets 36-22. I have to read this. Read out on 4020, please, it says here. Abigail Yarwood, age 6, will be walking 10 miles from Limehouse Lions, who she plays for, to her favourite team, Rochdale Hornets. Walk is on the 27th of June. Abigail wants to raise money for 3 causes. Barnabas, a charity helping homeless people. 50% of the money will be going here. Limehouse Lions, they have kids rugby teams for age 3+. Abigail plays for the under 7s. And All Hornets, the Supporters Association of Rochdale Hornets, help the team with squad builder and do lots of fun things for junior members. Also, they support the club's charity, which is currently Click Sergeant. Abigail's mummy, Janet, has to walk it too. She has a just funding page, currently at £640. So I'll share the link later.
Good luck, Abigail.
10 miles. It's a lot of walking to do.
I bought a car for that sort of distance.
Honestly, Rochdale Hornets need the money for their squad builder because they lost at Hunslet, but up the chocolate and whatever they are this week. North Wales beat Coventry, back with a bump, 36-12. West Wales lost to Barrow, 60 points to 10. It's not worked out yet for West Wales, has it? They were very buoyant pre-season. Well, we kind of...
I don't think Gavin Henson's played for them yet either.
Apart from in that cup game on the telly, when Danica got told for talking too much. And
told off by who?
Well, some ex-pro.
Who talks too much.
Yeah. And not that one. And Workington beat Keighley 34-20. So Barrow top still 5 from 5. Workington and Doncaster just below 4 from 5.
It's a good division, but again the concern is that there's a meeting soon between Championship and League One clubs. If they get no funding, what is the future for?
And when is that?
Soon.
It's soon. I heard it was soon. I don't know. The way everything's going, it seems like everything's cutting. So brace yourself, gentlemen. It looks like I'm not going to be giving much away.
So they don't ban gambling sponsorship, otherwise we are in trouble. This week's fixtures: Castle versus Hull, which is on YouTube. This is where Super League and the RFL need a policy where they tell everyone to tweet, and everyone tweets, like everyone within the sport, to get people to watch it on YouTube.
That'll be interesting, because one team that's buoyant from going to Wembley, which will have that as a not too distant a goal, and another team who's got everything to prove because they didn't get there. I'd put quite a big Hull win in there for that myself.
Sure,
and nobody will care
no,
in Castle.
No.
Well, now they've got loads of time to put merchandise out as well, which is good. Which you always say is trying, get you. We've already got flat caps out with Wembley written on them.
Well done.
Friday, Huddersfield Wigan not on. Hull KR Salford on.
Big game for Salford, that. I have a feeling that we've talked a lot about Hull KR on this programme, about the great things they're doing. I don't think they're even relegation candidates now. They don't even need to win this to not be drawn back into it. There's a real confidence about the way they're playing. But if Salford were to lose that, it's them and Leigh in the big relegation shootout.
Before we go back to the fixtures, here's Janet. Could Danny Richardson be going to Newcastle? They have gone full time. Would be a good addition alongside George Williams. So they have 2 players coming in this week. There you go.
Cass aren't going to let him go.
George Williams.
All the fixtures.
George Williams will not be going to Newcastle.
Who disgracefully took a holiday having been released from his contract. Clickbait.
I wouldn't be surprised. I think George Williams was probably going to Warrington in 2022. I think after the way they played this week, they need George Williams in there now, and they're going to have to do some manoeuvring of somebody to get room on the salary cap.
Someone asked about Mike Cooper. What would you have done if a player had swerved into you on the touchline?
I think you've got to have retribution to that. I think I don't mean there and then. And you're not going to start physically with him because there's some strong.
But was it deliberate? Do you think? Because again, camera angles can make even an unintentional collision seem like it's deliberate.
I think it look. Wherever he's come from on the field, he's not just come off there as he's. I just think that I think no matter what's going on, you've got to have respect for people, even if you don't particularly get on or you're not happy that you've been taken off. I think that you're just crossing a line for me. I think that's poor. And if you're in charge of a team, the only way you can do it is go, I'm not having this, I'm not having it. So if it hurts the team, you've got to do something. It's just, I don't know.
So that means Wakefield 4 in a row on Friday when they go to Warrington. Firing up the table. That puts us on, 40%, yeah. 4 out of 10, yeah. Work that out. Leeds and Saints, which might be on or might not be on.
We'll know in the morning if we don't tonight.
Saturday, hopefully Derek's been watching the programme because he might have written his programme notes after this thing. They take on Catalan Dragons in repeat of the
I think that's a big game for Catalan because they've proved over the last 3 matches that they should be treated as genuine contenders. But to do that, you've got to win the games that you're expected to win. You know you're going to have to be up when you play Hull and you play Saints and you play Wigan. But it's travelling to Leigh on a Saturday with, only yourselves cheering you on. Yeah. Those are the games you've got to win if you're going to be taken as serious contenders.
I think if you're going to win a championship or the Super League, those are the games where you've got to find it from within, and they do look better. But then you get an odd shock, don't you? You go, oh, but then you think, should I be surprised? But they do look, at a canter they should be Leigh. But
I think it's a big test for Catalan, more than it is for Leigh.
Resident Fair fan Dave thinks Janet meant Robbie Williams signing for Newcastle. I think they've got more chance of signing Charlie Williams, and he's been dead for a few years now. Dave will be looking forward to it in Wembley. He'll be queuing up outside Post Office Road getting his tickets. Oldham versus Sheffield, big game, bottom of the championship, mid-table of the championship. Both teams with 2 wins, but Sheffield have got 2 draws. Hang on. So it says win percentage, right? So a win is a win, right? So if they've won 2 of 8, their win percentage should be 25%. But they've got 2 draws. So they're on, how does that work? They're on 37.5%.
You must get
And Oldham are on 2 wins.
half a percent for drawing a game.
In League One, I don't understand that. Someone will know. Barrow take on Rochdale. Again, not an easy game for Rochdale, having lost their last 2. And London Scholars take on Hunslet. So that'll be a good game because both get. Look at how tight that league is, as you say. Both with 2 wins and 3 defeats. Coleman Derby. They're both at London now, aren't they? Sunday, Dewsbury versus Toulouse Olympique. Featherstone versus Bradford. Featherstone not only have signed Darcy Lussick from Salford, they've just signed Will Dagger from Hull KR in the last hour or so.
Is that a strange signing that Salford need everyone on board that they can't at the moment because of the position they're in, and they're letting Darcy Lussick go to the Championship? Have they had a long enough look at him to know that they don't think he can do the job? Can with so many fixtures piling up, what's happened there?
Well, you think, don't you, something's gone on because, like you said, you need the troops. The one thing you do need is numbers, and unless they're bringing someone in, like George Williams or something like that, but
to play prop.
I just find it a little bizarre unless there's a request or there's something's gone on where
Can't give him the promised minutes was the reason.
It's a reason.
5 Bradford. Tasty game, that one, 3 o'clock on Sunday. Halifax York. York again with 1 eye on Wembley. Swinton Newcastle. Bottom of the table clash. Whitehaven Batley. Widnes London. And in League One, Coventry Workington, Keighley West Wales, and North Wales versus Doncaster. I think they're allowed crowds now, I think, in Wales as well. So that'll be the first game in Wales with a crowd, I think. Don't want to get that wrong. But interesting times, and hopefully no more postponements or cancellations. We have done well, I think, to get to this point of the season without any bother, and at least we're not like Rugby Union, which is cancelling games at the end of their season, which is...
I just think the shame is, and we said it at the time, that economics is one thing, but when you've got a fixture list that has very little give in it, every game you lose through the inevitability that there was going to be a COVID issue somewhere. It's all very well having points percentage, but that's almost admitting that there's going to be an issue you can't solve. I think the worry as well is with that. I think it's 7 Huddersfield players who were affected. If they have to stand down for 2 weeks, it's not just this week's game that will go, it's next week's as well. And if the same thing happens with Leeds and St Helens, I think Leeds, bizarrely, are due in Catalan next week, and we all know what happened the last time they were due to go to Catalan.
Yeah. Can you get a point deduction this time?
I wonder why you say you.
Well, you're Leeds. You are Leeds. People think I'm Wakefield, man. I'm not. I don't employ me anymore. Is there anything else? Are we done?
Unless we've forgotten anything. Biscuits are starting to run out.
Yeah.
I think we should say that Robert Elston's back on furlough this week,
yeah,
which is why we had the coffees before rather than after.
It's a nightmare, isn't it? I'm sure there was something, but I can't think what it was now.
No.
No.
You're getting like me at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Remember,
you sit bolt upright.
It's,
I meant to mention.
I've got 3 days now where I'm working, and it's going to be like every 2 minutes is another greyhound race. So, like by Saturday, my head will be completely frazzled. So, if my head's like this now, I don't know. Congratulations, St Helens. Not for the men's final. I don't. Castle fans think I'm being presumptuous. I'll tell you who we should congratulate: Tom Maguire, because he helped us from the very start of this thing.
Big fan of Tom Maguire.
And he's going to be walking out of Wembley.
Somebody should sponsor him a new suit.
He might be playing at halfback. He might be replacing Danny Richardson at this rate. Get in trouble then. Oh well. That's good. Thank you very much for coming in.
Pleasure.
And enlightening us.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think it was important to get that perspective, particularly about talent nurturing junior game and the reasoning behind some of the decisions that we just go, I don't understand that.
And what's important is we need to clear this up, because on Wikipedia, which we know is always right, it does say that your two sporting heroes growing up were former Leeds star Gary Schofield and ex-Manchester United and England football captain Brian Robson. Is that correct? Yeah.
Loved them both.
But you know what?
Still love Scully.
Who doesn't?
Hey.
But Brian Robson, unlike Gary Schofield, was on an episode of Jossie's Giants. So
Yeah, I was there.
on that bombshell. Why did Sid Woodall like a rugby league? You were on about cricket. Yeah, what about rugby league? We'll be back next week. We'll have another guest. Well, I'm writing your screen now on YouTube. We'll have a guest on Monday. So join us then. But thank you very much, YouTube. Thank you very much for your comments. Or subscribe. I keep meaning to say that, but tell all your friends. And on Facebook as well. I think it's worked throughout, which is an amazing thing. All of you that are watching, thank you for watching. Goodbye.